Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Sunletter. Thank you for tuning in to How to Fight CPS and Win, the New York edition. My claim to fame is that I divorced an attorney who formerly worked for Child Protective Services in Niagara County, New York. My divorce was pretty long, over 10 years, and just about every hurdle that you could imagine was probably thrown my way. So I bring that experience to the table to share with others. And today we have a very special guest, Frances Catapano. She is an attorney in New York who followed the case of Thomas Velva very closely. Thomas Velva is a very horrid situation where a child died. Dear Tommy Velva, he died in his father's custody while CPS was involved, and he died. I think, Frances. I think it was he when did he die? It was January. Well, you know exactly when it was because it was special to you in a certain way.
January 17th, 2020.
Right. So, Frances, can you tell the listeners what attracted you to follow this story so closely?
Well, on January 18th, my daughter was diagnosed with autism. She was 2 at the time. She's 5 now. And I obviously a lot was going through my mind, and that whole week I was still processing it. And the news broke out about the arrest of Michael Valva and Angela Polina, and that was on January 24th. And I was still processing my daughter's diagnosis. And just when I saw the details, the details were coming out little by little. And when I saw that, it just hit home.
The details that Frances is speaking of is that Tommy Velva was a child with autism, and his father was a cop in, I think he was Suffolk County, Frances. I don't know if your screen is frozen. It was either Suffolk or Nassau County. And there were multiple calls to Child Protective Services, and it's heinous. There were reports that Tommy was being forced to sleep in the garage, which anyone living in New York knows that sleeping in a garage in January, it ended up being fatal for Tommy, and he died of hypothermia, but I'm not sure if that was actually what did happen, but he was definitely sleeping in a freezing garage. And there was a lot of suspicion about the case because the father, being a cop, had custody despite I think there were hundreds of reports to the hotline. Is that correct, Frances?
Yes, there were at least 17 calls, I believe. Well, first, she lost the custody, and then once they moved to that house in Suffolk County, then there were 17 calls, I believe, to CPS made by the school upon information and belief, and nothing was done. And I personally think that this was because he was a cop, and certain people command respect in society. So that's why I believe they were less inclined to think that Michael Valva could do anything wrong because a police officer, and they're supposed to command respect, holds a high position in society.
And Justinia is from Poland, I believe, where I think she might even be at present, but I'm not sure. And so there was some belief too that she was being treated as a foreigner and not given that he was given preferential treatment over her, and she's the female, and there were accusations that she was falsely alleging the abuse of her children, and she pled just about everywhere. I know she wrote a letter to the Attorney General. She, had an online presence where she was trying to get help, and everyone kept turning a blind eye when she knew her children were in danger. So, a couple other things too. that really bother me about this case is the excuses that New York State and Suffolk County was making, why they missed the abuse. They blamed two things that I'm aware of. One of the things that they blamed was that they are overworked and underpaid. And when you look into the story, there was at the time of Tommy's death, there was 1 to 12 or 1 to 17 caseworkers, depending on the time frame that were during his calls. And in Erie County, New York, we have an infamous case as well, another tragic case. This was back in the year 2013 when Ian Brooks died in New York State. He was Erie County, the Buffalo area. And they made the discovery then when this child died that there was one case worker to 50 cases. So it's an extreme difference between the number of caseworkers per or number of cases per caseworker in Tommy's case versus Ian's case. And it bothers me that CPS says that 12 cases is too many. So if 12 cases is too many, then Ian Brooks's case was 4 times more fatal than 1 to 12 or 1 to 17. And I don't know if I really believe that 12 to 17 cases per caseworker is the cause of any contributed in any way to Tommy's death. What do you think, Frances?
I don't know about that. I I mean, I can't read anyone's mind, but I think it was societal biases that contributed to this inaction, this negligence on the part of CPS. Um,
And then they blamed Tommy's autism, which probably tugged at your heartstrings, being a mom of an autistic child. And to me, I don't believe that either, because uh, if all the teachers in school were blowing up the hotline with reports, then how come caseworkers who are supposed to be trained in this didn't recognize the abuse? So I find it hard to believe that the autism concealed their ability to see the abuse, and I don't know what you think about that, Frances.
I think they were just plain negligent. I mean, whether it's autism or whether it was any abuse, they had an obligation, they had a duty to remove those boys. It was pretty obvious. I mean, the school um, reported that one of the kids was losing weight. They were um, picking up crumbs from the floor to eat. So, um, and then they were being punished simply because Angela would found out that they were being given food at school.
And so, the reason I wanted to touch on this story was because the the uh, the trials were very recently. Michael's trial was first, and Angelina Polina's trial was second. And you attended, I think you said you attended the sentencing for Angelina.
Yes, I attended the sentencing.
And what did you gather from there?
Um, well, I basically, from what the prosecutor was saying, they were being punished for being autistic. So yeah, that's exactly where that factors in. That I mean, she became enraged over the kids having incontinence, and that's pretty common with kids with autism. She was complaining that their condition was causing her garage, her house to be filthy. It was all about her, pretty much. And that infuriated me. That hit home because I felt she would have been doing the same thing to my child had my child been in that household.
Yeah. And all of us, nobody's perfect. People without autism or what have you, we all have our traits that others may not cherish. Um, but if you find a child challenging, you have a responsibility to recognize that. And these boys had a safe parent, and still they took children from a loving, caring, capable mother, and they didn't even, feel they felt frustrated with the children that they took from the mother. It's one thing to steal a mother's children from her, another to know that you can't even care for them and steal them. I think you're frozen again. Um, what do you feel? One of the other things that bother me about this case is there's no accountability for anyone that worked for Child Protective Services. I don't think that there's any arrests to date. No one being held accountable for this biasness that's rather apparent, I think, to anyone that followed the case.
Well, they're
How do you
doing
feel
it.
about that?
That's what the DA said recently.
He said, what did the DA say?
They're doing an inquiry.
They're still doing an inquiry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
CPS
because
that went wrong.
nobody won here because there's a child death. So Tommy lost his life. Tommy's brothers lost their sibling. Justina lost a child, and she's caring for children that are grieving. She has her own hole in her heart, and you know, it's still never just because Michael and Angelina did get their sentencing, and I think they both got 25 years.
Yes.
Did they? Yeah. But somehow CPS, they benefited from this situation so far. Their job got easier because they complained that they're overworked and underpaid. So the result of Tommy's death is no accountability, but in fact, their job just got easier.
Yes, that's true, but they're doing an inquiry, so hopefully something will come out and something will be done this time. And hopefully they'll be more vigilant about removing kids in dangerous situations.
Right. I think that, I'm a female, so maybe I'm biased in saying this, but there seems to be a lot of accusing sincere mothers of lying about their children's abuse. Have you seen much of that?
I can't speak to that, although I have seen with some good parents getting calls for innocuous things versus you hear some people, uh, some cases where kids really need to be removed and they're not, obviously, in this case.
You don't work in family law, right?
No.
Okay.
But
Yeah. Do you have any opinion about CPS in general in New York State?
well, just like I had said, sometimes I have seen where parents have gotten visits over minor things like the kid got hurt at school versus and it's unfounded and it's not fair versus then I hear obviously about this story and I think why, like,
Yeah.
why wasn't that child removed?
Um, as an attorney watching this situation unfold, was there anything from a legal perspective that you saw that you wished would have been handled differently?
Well, um obviously Justina's suit is still pending. CPS, I my focus is on CPS. I'm not going to say anything about the judges or the attorneys or the law guardians. It's not my place. I'm a lawyer myself and I'm keeping everything civil. So, um, I but my focus is CPS. They need to do their jobs.
Do you feel that CPS was the most culpable entity in this situation beyond Michael and Angelina, obviously?
Yes. They should have removed those kids a long time ago. Put them anywhere but there. I mean, obviously, Justina is the good parent, but they should have removed them. Bottom line, it was very obvious. It was glaring.
Right. So again, that goes back to it's glaringly obvious that the children were being abused, and yet they blamed it on the autism, and that clouded their judgment and ability to detect. Yet all the teachers could see, and multiple other reporters who made reports, which is contradictory to their excuses why they were not able to detect the abuse. And to me, it's very upsetting. Any changes that you'd like to see in the system? Anything that you think would uh, better the situation in New York with in terms of CPS?
Um, well, simply do your job. Simply, when you see obvious signs of severe abuse, remove them.
Justinia, I think she started a campaign um, uh, to have CPS caseworkers wear body cameras just like the police do. Do you think there's any benefit to that?
There may be. That's probably not a bad idea.
And I think there's another gentleman who's following Justinia's case pretty closely, and he's also asking for cameras in the court. How do you feel about that?
Well, they used to televise trials and now they don't. I don't understand why not. There's nothing to hide, and it would keep the public informed.
Right. That's my sentiment too, because again, like you say, they used to have the trials public, but also the appellate courts. I think all of the New York State appellate courts have live webcam, and they don't just live broadcast their oral arguments. They archive them so the public can look them up at any time. So, um, and they handle sensitive matters in the appellate courts. They handle family court appeals and child removals and all this confidential stuff that the lower courts say, oh, you can't have cameras in here because it's confidential. So I think the precedence is, like you said, they used to do it. Why did they stop? And what are they, there shouldn't be anything to hide. We should be welcoming transparency. So I agree that I the laws were initially made when we didn't have the ability to have cameras as much, and I think that needs to be revisited with the developments in IT and availability and ease of broadcasting now.
Yes.
How's your daughter doing?
My daughter is, it's one day at a time. She just got a device, so they're teaching her to communicate in that manner.
That's
She,
super awesome.
yes, well, she used to be able to speak. I mean, she started speaking at a very young age. Um, and then all of a sudden, gradually, she just lost her ability to speak. Um, and now she's fully nonverbal, but they they started off by teaching her to communicate with pictures, to tell us what she needs, what she wants. But now they got her a device at school, so they're teaching her to use that to communicate her needs and wants. And I'm hoping, I mean, eventually the higher levels of the device include a keyboard. So hopefully she learns to read and then she'll eventually type and be able to have a full conversation with us.
Super awesome. So, with every tragedy, sometimes there's a silver lining to the cloud, and there's some lessons to be learned and wisdom gained from the situation. And while it doesn't rest well with me that they blamed Tommy's autism as a reason why it clouded their judgment to detect the abuse, On the other hand, maybe this can lead to some improvements how investigations are conducted with autistic children. Um, do you have any hopes about that situation, or anything that you saw or thought might be a great idea for children with special needs who are undergoing investigations? Oh, I think you froze.
Well, hopefully, like I said before, um, they'll be more vigilant after this tragedy.
I wonder the device that your daughter is learning. I wonder if those devices are available to investigators and so forth, and they're when they're trying to communicate with children and find out what's going on, or what resources are available.
I think in general they should train CPS workers on autism. That's definitely not a bad idea.
Yeah. How do you know if your daughter is hurt from anything right now? Well, I think it's frozen again. Um, so, uh, yep, you're back. So, in dealing with your daughter, if she gets
Hi.
hurt, how does she communicate it?
She cries. Sometimes she has a meltdown and rolls over on the floor, and I have to figure out what she needs, what's bothering her. Or,
Has
yeah.
has the has the electronics decreased some of the frustration now that she's able to explain some things?
Well, it's new, so it's a work in progress, but hopefully it will.
Yeah.
It's brand new. She just got it. She's just learning it now, and we're just learning.
How do you feel about the sentencing that Michael and Angelina got? The 25 years.
They deserved it. Hopefully they're not going to be paroled. I don't think that there would be a good case for parole if and when that time comes, because this is a pretty heinous crime, and it's a crime against a child, against children. So it doesn't look good for them.
Yeah. I agree. I hope 25 years is a little bit light. I think for a child, it is a child with disabilities too.
Well, the
Um,
maximum is life. So hopefully they will be in prison for the rest of their lives. I mean, we can't predict the future, but I'm hoping whoever is near and dear to this case will oppose parole for them.
yeah. So it's another folly for CPS in New York State, and hopefully this investigation of the conduct of Child Protective Services elicits some meaningful information. And I do hope that we start to see CPS being held accountable. And certainly, um, if our own government doesn't hold the caseworkers accountable and so forth, I hope that Justinia's lawsuit that she's litigating, I think it's John Norenberg's firm.
Yeah.
I hope that they have success. And ultimately, this isn't just for Justinia's family. I think that these measures hopefully will have an impact on childcare and detection of abuse and helping children in general, that they learn to do the right thing.
Yes, I hope so too.
Yeah.
And with that, I have to pick up my daughter, but thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your information. And I'm going to finish up and thank everyone for participating and listening today. As you can see, our system is in dire need of a lot of reform. And this isn't just a problem of education. This isn't just a problem of teaching and requiring more education of caseworkers and supervisors. This is a problem with biases. whether it's cronyism, nepotism, sexism, racism. There are a lot of evil isms in the world, and we need to eradicate them from our protective services when children are among our most vulnerable population. So hopefully Tommy's situation brings light to children and better improved safety for children in his name and in his honor. Thank you everyone for listening tonight, and hug your children if they're with you. And my heart goes out to anyone that's struggling. And may there be brighter days. Thank you.